Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our fourth webinar of 2020, Managing Options in Join. My name is Gustav Choto. I'm the head of customer success here at Join. And I'm really excited about today's topic, Managing Options in Join. Our product design team, engineering have been working really hard on this. And I'd like to just first start by thanking them for their hard work and dedication. Before we get started, I'd like to announce a few housekeeping items. Everyone on the webinar is muted. If you have a question, please post it to the Q&A. There is a section specifically for Q&A. Please don't post it in the chat so we can keep track. My colleague, Jim Forrester, will be fielding those questions and alerting me. We will be recording this webinar and we'll post it to our help center in the next couple of days. All registered attendees will get a link once it's posted. And feel free to share that with your colleagues if you like. Today's topic is on a much anticipated requested feature, mutually exclusive options. We've heard from many of you that one of the most difficult aspects of managing the VE process is weighing different options and alternatives. That decision-making process often requires a choice between multiple overlapping alternatives, which is difficult to manage when you're using a spreadsheet. It also requires a substantial amount of cleanup after the fact to determine the final cost. And there are many cases where teams consider multiple options or versions for a change, and it's not as simple as saying yes or no to that change. So some examples of that are a pre-CAD manager wants to propose a change like removing sunshades. So rather than simply removing them all, they would like to explore the idea of removing 25% or 50% or 100% of those shades. Or in another instance, maybe an owner has agreed to a different facade finish to reduce the project costs, but wants to iterate on a few decisions. In Join, users has historically created multiple items and treated them as options as a workaround. Today, we're excited to announce this is no longer necessary. In Join, now you'll be able to create and manage dependencies between an item and its options, so double up and cleanup are never necessary. Options in Join help you overcome the challenges of managing and present project decisions that consider multiple alternatives. Now you can create an item with a group of options that allows you to avoid risky cost duplication or accidentally omitting an idea. When your project stakeholders select an option, they want to move forward with it, they can simply accept it, and all other options with that item will automatically be rejected. So no more worrying about accidentally accepting two versions of the same change. Let's review today's agenda and webinar objectives. So today we're going to cover how to create and manage options, grouping existing options of the same change, and then seeing how options are displayed in the dashboard and reports, and then how to effectively present options to an owner. So without further ado, let's jump into options. When we come into Join, and one thing just before we start into our presentation of options, this is not going to be a comprehensive demonstration of all of Join. This will be a demonstration in context of options. If you're interested in learning more about Join and getting an introductory demo, please reach out to us and we're happy to do that. So the first time, whenever you come into Join, we always bring you to the dashboard page. Our dashboard is your home base. It can give you a lot of high-level information about your project. In context of options, when we hover over over our dots on the trend line, we can see information about an option, about an item. And in this case, I want to bring your attention to this item here. This item has 4 different options. So one difference that you'll see here is that a regular item just gives you one total, whereas an option will show you a range of cost. So this particular item has 4 options that can range anywhere from reducing the price to 141,000 to increasing it to 163,000. As we move down, we just pass by the estimate graph, which is not impacted by our options. But if we go down to our items graph, then we can see how options are impacting the graph now. So just from a high level, if you hover over any of these bars, you'll see at the bottom, you can get information about the item that you're hovering over. Currently, we are in the group by status. And as we hover over, I want to bring your attention to this particular item, add or delete entry vestibule. So one difference you're going to notice here with an item with option is now we are highlighting multiple bars depending on the options are doing from a cost perspective when you're in status. So in this case, this particular option can either add 163,000 or reduce the cost by 141. And we can just see some quick high-level information about this particular item. So that said, let's transition over to the items list. Items list is our second view. So now that we have options, the fastest way to find items with options is to scroll down the list and look for a couple of things. You'll see that the range is showing here now in our item. You'll also notice a symbol here that indicates there are options, how many options, and then if you hover over these little squares, these are hyperlinked right to the option, and they give you the name of the option. So let's jump into this particular item and look at the options and what some of the differences are. So when you open up an item with options, you'll notice right away, historically before an item with no options, you would see the estimate grid here. Now we have 3 options here: delete entry vestibule, delete half of the entry vestibule, or add the entry vestibule. We see the cost, and then we can see the range. We can collapse that and see just a summary. Now let's jump into an option. So now this is what a normal item would typically look like, but this is an option now. So you still have all of the capabilities that you have within an item. You can create a detailed estimate and continue to add categorization at the line item level. Anything that does not have categorization here will inherit our categories over to the right. And to view the rest of the options, we have a hyperlink up at the top that brings you right over to the next option so you can see details about that option. So this is an existing option. So let's take a look at what it looks like to create a brand new item with options. So I'll go ahead and create a new item. Let's just call this sunshade options. And what I'm doing now, I'm just going to create a brand new item. Here, I'll go to the hyperlink. It brings me right into that item. Now I want to add some options. So let's say I want to reduce shades by 50%. That's my first option. Create another. And then I can say reduce shades by 25%. Create another. And in this case, maybe I have an item that I created previously that was related to this. Maybe I want to go and find that one. So I go here to the Find Existing tab, and I'll go and find my. So I have that, and I can just add that option. So now I've created an item with options, and now I have 4 options here that I can consider. So let's go back to the dashboard again. So just in terms of rights and permissions, anyone can create an option create an item and an option depending on their role. So administrators and general contractors can modify and create any item and option. All the other roles can create and modify only options that they've created. So now we have cases where, let's say you've used the old method of creating multiple items to display options. So in this case, I have item 25, 27, and 28. These are alternate gym foundations. So in this particular case, what I want to do is actually group these together so that I'm not triple counting this cost and artificially inflating any potential savings. So what I'll do is go ahead and select that item. And I will find the other option. And you can do multiple options at once. So now you'll notice that now I have 3 options within this item. I'll just remove that A there. So I have 25.1, 27, and then 28. If for some reason, say I accidentally added the wrong option, I can easily detach this option. So I accidentally added double glazing versus triple glazing on the west facade. That's not something that I want to consider here for this particular item. So I'll detach this option. And one thing about detaching options to note that's important is once you detach it, it becomes a standalone item again. So you're basically putting it back into your item list. So if you really wanted to just reject the item, it's really easy to do so now. If you hover over the status symbol here, we'll have all our symbols in our status. And so for example, if I accept this particular item, I automatically have rejected these other 2. So I can even, at that point, set it as non-applicable or set it as rejected as well. So a couple of things here to note. In the items view, now you'll notice that I've got the sunshade here with my 4 options. And one thing you'll notice here, now I can hover over any of these nodes and then jump right into that option. And at this point, I can continue to add more detail, add more information to this particular option. So Jim, do we have any questions so far?
We do, Gustav, a bunch of questions. So the first one is, are you able to add an item to an item that already has options? I think you just showed that, but maybe show it again. And Gustav, I think your screen is lagging a little bit, so go slow with your mouse and your clicks, please.
Thank you, appreciate that. Yes, so the question is, can you add an item to an item with options? So yeah, so let's go to our add and delete entry vestibule as an example. And we go to our add options button at the top of the item. We can go to the find existing tab, and then we can either scroll or search for something. So let's say we wanted to add the third wall. Click done. And then now, since that item was already accepted, it automatically put these other ones into like pending rejected mode. Any other questions, Jim? Okay, I see.
So yes, the question is, I've got a bunch of options here with different costs, and you've accepted one of them. The others get automatically rejected. How do you show that in terms of dashboard views? How does that item
Great question.
now sort of reflect when I go look at it?
That's great. That's a good question. So now that I've accepted one item and we've automatically rejected everything else, you'll see now it'll still show up here in my dashboard. So I have the add or delete entry vestibule. It was an addition of $163,000. And then if I go here to the addition, so now I'm actually going to add 101,738 for this one because the item that I just incorporated actually was a deduction of this month.
And then a follow-up question is, if you have line item categorization within those options, how might that get displayed in this view?
That's a great question. So one thing you'll notice, let's go into this particular. So at our last webinar, we talked about categorizing at the line level. So if your option has categorization at this level, which is easy to add just by clicking the ellipsis and adding that in, this particular item is B20 and this one is C1030. We go over to the dashboard page and up here on the upper right of the items graph, we can toggle over to unit format. And I believe that there was a B30. So now you can see that this particular item is impacting the B, but it is also impacting C. So it highlights all of the impacted categories when the items are categorized at the item level, at the line item level. That was a good question.
And for the benefit of the audience, Gustav, I'm asking a question that I'm going off the cuff. This is Jim's question. Maybe you can explain the logic of why we display it that way to people.
Well, there are occasions where,
in other words, all of the different categories lit up.
So the reason we do that is because there are items that can span multiple scopes of work. For example, this add delete entry vestibule has some glazing involved. It could have some doors, some framing. All of those scopes can span different either master format divisions or uniformat levels. So when we categorize at that item level, we're giving you a truer view of how that particular item is impacting across multiple categories. So say, for example, you have a certain budget that you're trying to stay within on your B shell or your C interiors, maybe different option could impact that differently. So you may want to see that in a graphical view like we're seeing here.
Great. So I have another question about naming. So what happens when you go to the items list and you create a new item with options from an existing item? What happens to that name? Does it change at all? Do we need to rename things?
So you're saying if I were to go. So let me see let me make sure I understand the question. So if I go into an existing item and I add options to it, how do I?
Yes, what happens to the name of the item that is the parent? And when you create an option within that, or you make that into an item with options, what happens to the names?
So the name of the parent item will actually become the name of the first option. And then the option that we just added it'll inherit whatever you've typed in. So best practice might be to modify this name to make it obvious that it is an option, even though in the items view, you can always tell what an option is. So I hope that answered the question.
It does. So what you're suggesting is, from a best practice, if you don't want to have some duplication, to create a new item with a sort of unique name that you would then group your existing items into.
Yeah, so let's say facade options. We would just create and close. We can go to that. And then now we can just start creating our options. So we'll make this called option 2. So if you notice, when I add options to an existing item, the first option is the name of the actual first item. So I'm going to call this option 2. Facade options.
And Gustav, go slow with your mouse.
Got it. So we got a little lag. So now you'll see this name was inherited from this one. So what I would do as a best practice is come in to that option, rename it option 1. And then now we have facade options with facade option 1 and then facade option 2.
So another question for you, Gustav. Talk about permissions. Who can create options?
So by default, everyone can create items, can create options. So let's take a quick peek. Just one thing to note, administrators and general contractor roles can modify all options regardless of whether they are the author or but everyone else, so from architect, subcontractor, and owner, they can create options and items, and they can modify ones that they own. And if you don't want them to create options, you can actually edit the role as well and then toggle it to can view, or even increase their permissions to can view, edit, and delete all items and options. Do we have any more, Jim?
That's all of the questions so far. So if there are others, there's one that just came in. So are changes to an existing option within the parent updated back to the standalone option? So Greg, if you could maybe give me a little more to go on there. I think the question is, what changes occur when you make changes to an option? How are those changes reflected back to the parent item?
So I'd answer that by saying that you can look at, once an item has options, it's essentially a bucket. Like, it holds the detail for your options. So there's not a lot that really gets changed at the parent level. It's basically a holder for all your items. So a lot of all your detail is coming into your option. And you can see here that I'm at the parent level, and really the only things that I can change are here, and then all cost and estimate information is happening within the option here.
What about history, Gustav? Talk a little bit about how history is tracked in a parent item and the options.
Great question. Yeah, so you'll notice that the item has its own history here. You can see everything, including what the Here's additions of options, some prices and changes. If we go into an option, you'll see that it has its own history. So in this particular case, it's only gone through 2 changes. So it had 9 changes today. So there is some independence between the parent item and the child options. So they'll have their own independent history. And if you ever break out an option into a item again, then it'll maintain that history.
Can you still pull an item with options from an older milestone into a newer milestone?
Yes, absolutely. Just as with any item that exists within Join, if it's in an older or a previous milestone, you can transition it to the current milestone.
Some great questions from our group, but I think we've come to the last of them and to the end of our time, Gustav.
Awesome. Well, some really great questions, and thank you for the help, Jim, and for your questions as well. Just to conclude, let me go back to our presentation here. Let's see. So some additional resources. If you would like to start a new project, it's very easy. On your dashboard page of your login, there's a new project button. So feel free there to start any new projects that you have on the horizon. If you need any extra help or like to read any articles regarding options or anything else about Join, go to success.join.build. You can also find the Help Center at the Help button in the app. You can also contact us at customer support@join.build, or you can contact me directly at gustav@join.build. And for our last announcement, I'd like to hand it over to Jim. Jim, can you tell us about our next webinar coming up in June?
Yeah, thanks. So our next webinar is going to be titled, Now is the Time to Invest in Virtual Pre-Con Collaboration. And the objective of this webinar, it's a new first for us here at Join. It's going to be the first one we're doing for open to the public, to everyone. So all the webinars we've been doing thus far have really been for customers to go into detail around a specific topic like options that you saw today. This one is going to be open to just about everybody who are interested in hearing more about the Join story and how we are focused exclusively on sort of the pre-construction phase and the challenges around the iterative project delivery process and how Join is really addressed at helping that those folks that are involved with that phase of the project. So this will be open to the public, and we'll continue to do very focused webinars in the future on new and exciting enhancements for this group specifically, but the next one is going to be a little more generic in nature about showing Join off to an audience of people that may not have any exposure to it thus far.
Exciting stuff. Looking forward to this one. Thanks, Jim. We did have one last question. It's a general question. Yeah, the recording will be available to participants. So as soon as we're done here, I will download this video and get it into our help center, and I will send you a link. So look for it there. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and wish you guys good health. Stay safe. And if you need anything, or if you have more questions about options or anything regarding Join, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here for you guys, and we're happy to help. Jim, and thank you for your help today and for your questions and for introducing that that next webinar. I'm looking forward to it. Signing off here from Join. Take good care, everyone. Thanks again.